Welcome. I'm Kerry Chausmer, GHSA's Director of Programs and Member Services, and I am so glad that you are joining us today. We're pleased to partner with GHSA Associate Member Honda to bring you today's webinar. It highlights how state highway safety offices, in partnership with other state agencies and grantees and communities, can help address the issue of recalls, which affects 1 in every 5 vehicles on the road today. Before we start our discussion, I'd like to introduce Clinton Blair, American Honda's Director of Government and Industry Relations.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Clinton Blair, Head of Government and Industry Relations here at American Honda. I'd like to start by thanking the Governor's Highway Safety Association for their leadership and bringing us together today for an important conversation on automotive safety. At Honda, safety is our priority, guided by our philosophy of safety for everyone. That means working to advance measures that improve the safety of everyone sharing the road, including drivers of other vehicles, passengers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Our ambitious global goal is zero traffic collision fatalities involving Honda automobiles and motorcycles by 2050. With over 9.5 million Honda and Acura vehicles on U.S. roads equipped with advanced driver assistance technologies, we're making strides. And the continued rollout of advanced and automated vehicle technologies will no doubt continue to deliver new safety benefits to our industry. But technology alone is not enough. Millions of vehicles today travel U.S. roads with unrepaired safety defects. These vehicles of all different makes and models pose a significant risk to road safety. At Honda, we see it not just as a legal obligation, but a moral one, to repair or account for 100% of affected vehicles as quickly as possible. But to reach such levels of completion rates, it will take true collaboration among industry, government, and consumers. We value strong partnerships with government agencies and safety advocates to help educate and inform consumers about recalls and encourage drivers to take advantage of the free remedies available to them. Together, we can make a real difference in driving toward a future that is safer for everyone. Thank you again to everyone for participating in today's discussion. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
For today's webinar, we've convened a panel of experts to share their insights on how state highway safety offices and your partners can leverage federal and private sector resources to help reduce the number of open recalls on our roads. Craig Orlan will kick us off with an overview of how Honda is addressing vehicle recalls. Craig joined American Honda in 2012 as their state relations specialist. Now the Director of State and Local Government Relations, he oversees the company's legislative affairs, advocacy, and public policy efforts with state and local governments. Craig leads an industry-wide effort to enact state legislation to address the proliferation of dangerous counterfeit and non-functional airbags. To date, 38 states have enacted this model legislation, which has been endorsed by several public policy organizations and other industry groups. He also leads an effort to improve recall completion rates in the states by engaging with DMVs and inspection stations to provide supplemental notifications of open safety recalls to consumers.
As Clinton mentioned, improving recall completion rates has been a long-standing priority for Honda. We really appreciate you all taking the time to learn more about how automakers and state governments can work together to help achieve this goal. So let's start by talking about what exactly a safety recall is. A recall occurs when either a vehicle manufacturer or the government identifies a defect or issue that could potentially compromise the safety of a vehicle. When a safety defect is identified, manufacturers are required to do 2 things under federal law. The first is notify consumers about the defect, and the second is to provide a free remedy for the life of the vehicle. This is an obligation that Honda takes incredibly seriously. It's not just a legal obligation, but a moral one as well, which is why our goal is to repair or otherwise account for every vehicle impacted by a safety recall. Unfortunately, despite our best intentions, automakers aren't coming close to meeting this goal. Right now, over 58 million cars in the US has an open safety recall. That's over 20% of the cars on our roads. and 14 million of those vehicles have more than one open recall. This is a very real safety threat, not just to the owners of those vehicles, but their passengers, the future owners of those vehicles, and other road users as well. So why are we falling short? And there's a couple of reasons for the shortfall. The biggest reason recalls aren't getting completed is that many vehicle owners are unaware that these recalls exist. Most vehicle defects make themselves known later in a vehicle's life. For example, a part may degrade in an unexpected way over time. By the time that problem is discovered, a car may be on its third, fourth, or even fifth owner. And since automakers aren't informed when vehicles change hands, we don't have great information about the current owners of those vehicles. So what are we doing about this? We go to great lengths to try to obtain this information, including purchasing it from vehicle registries and other sources, but that information is often outdated or incorrect by the time we get it. This means that millions of people are unaware that their vehicle has a safety defect, much less that they're entitled to a free repair. It's worth knowing that because communities of color, those suffering from housing insecurity, and other disadvantaged groups are overly dependent on the used vehicle market, they are more severely impacted by this problem, creating a serious inequity in motor vehicle safety. The second hurdle automakers face is the voluntary nature of recall completion from the consumer side. Unlike other countries that have recall completion rates in the high 90th percentile, there's no state or federal law requiring consumers to take advantage of those free recalls. While the majority of vehicle owners do take action when they're made aware of a safety recall, surveys conducted by Honda and other industry groups show that many customers acknowledge receipt of multiple recall communications, but still fail to act, even after being told that not doing so could result in injury or death. During the Takata airbag recall, one driver told Honda representatives that he wasn't going to get the recall repaired because he considered himself to be a good driver, and he didn't plan on ever needing his airbags, which would be funny if it wasn't so terrible. And again, it's worth pointing out that the failure of these vehicle owners to promptly remedy safety-related recalls, it's not just a risk to their safety, but others as well. The recent Takata airbag recall, which is the largest and most complicated in our industry's history, showed us that we'll never be able to reach our goal of 100% recall completion rates by ourselves. This recall impacted nearly 13 million Honda and Acura vehicles alone, and because of the extreme safety risk, we've taken unprecedented measures to fix these vehicles. We've made over 398 million individual owner outreach attempts, and those efforts are ongoing to this day. This includes emails, phone calls, 280 million mailed notices, and over 6.1 million text messages. We've also utilized print media, social media, radio, and other outlets to educate consumers. And for some vehicles that we've been unable to locate, we've hired private investigative firms to try and track them down. We've also purchased over 500,000 Takata inflators from salvage yards to ensure they never wind up in another vehicle again. To date, Honda has completed over 90% of all vehicle repairs as part of this recall. Considering the scale of the recall and the age of the vehicles involved, this is fairly impressive. But 12 years have passed and we still have a lot of work to do. To compare this completion rate with other industry recalls, we analyzed 14 unrelated recall campaigns. And while we found completion rates of up to 80% for vehicles in the first year of ownership, we also found the completion percentage declines with each passing year to around 33% in the 9th and 10th year of ownership. This is why automakers need the support of state governments to help. State governments, and specifically the DMVs, are the only entity that has regular touch points with vehicle owners in every state. This is at the sale of vehicle, this is upon the vehicle re-registration process, and in some cases, states have environmental and or safety inspections. What we want to do is leverage these existing touch points to provide supplemental notices of open safety recalls. I want to stress that this notification will be supplemental. Manufacturers are not looking to outsource our responsibility, and federal law would still require us to send notifications. I know the folks from Carfax and the Maryland Department of Transportation are going to speak more about logistics, but this can be done without adding to the workload of DMV staff. Because every state requires registration at the point of sale and regular re-registration, leveraging these contacts can help close the equity gap in notification that I mentioned before. Studies have also shown that reminders from trusted sources, like the government, is a major influence in having vehicle owners prioritize getting their vehicles fixed. In recent years, California, Connecticut, Maryland, Ohio, Texas, and Washington State have instituted some version of this program, and we're seeing impressive results. Additionally, other countries around the world utilize this model, which is largely why they routinely have completion percentages in the high 90th percentile. Please know that Honda and the rest of the auto industry wants to work with you all to make this happen. We understand that state DMVs are universally among the most overworked and underappreciated agencies in government, but there's a proven way to do this without impacting wait times or adding to the difficulty of frontline workers. We also understand each agency is different and may have specific challenges to overcome. That said, Honda and the rest of the industry needs your help on this, and we want to partner with you all to try to make this happen nationwide. Thanks.
Please join me in welcoming Chris Freeman. Currently serving as the head of government investigations and advocacy at Stellantis, Chris is responsible for leading cross-functional teams to enhance customer safety, investigate potential safety concerns, and manage recall completions. In addition to leading the Takata airbag recall campaign, Chris manages global recall efforts, develops outreach initiatives, and collaborates with auto industry partners to share best practices. Today, he will be discussing how states can access federal grant dollars to fund vehicle recall education campaigns.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Freeman. I work for Stellantis, the maker of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles. And today I'm here to talk to you about recall notification grants that are offered through NHTSA. Right now, 1 in 5 vehicles on the road has an open recall. Federal law requires manufacturers to notify owners when there is a safety-related recall, and in almost all cases, provide free repairs. Failure to obtain free repairs puts drivers, but really all roadway users at risk, pedestrians, cyclists, everybody at risk. As an example, more than 67 million defective Takata airbags have been recalled, and those recalls are associated with several deaths and hundreds of serious injuries. So why don't owners act? Despite significant outreach from manufacturers in many cases, still 1 in 5 vehicles has that open recall, and why? There are 2 main reasons. The first reason is apathy. When manufacturers reach owners, many choose still to not act, or they just simply don't prioritize the repair. Consumers are often suspicious of information from automakers or private companies. They think it's a scam, especially when they see a free repair. They may not believe it, and many need to hear this about these recalls from a trusted source. We also see an awareness gap. We often are unable to find the current owners and inform them that their vehicle has a recall and there's a free repair waiting. The reasons for this are a few, and they can be simply, we don't have up-to-date contact information. We get that information from each of the states. We lack understanding, or there's a lack of understanding by the owner about what a recall is and what it means. There are language barriers, and then we see the compounding of these factors with vulnerable populations. They often share multiple of those above factors. So in December of 2024, Stellantis conducted some online survey research activities among vehicle owners, and we oversampled some key demographics that are harder to engage in an effort to better understand perceptions, preferences, and behaviors around safety recalls. On the right side of the screen, you can see some of the specifics of the research methodology. You can see the demographics we oversampled for at the bottom right. The key findings that confusion remains among vehicle owners. There are a number of myths that persist in the marketplace, and respondents did show an interest in states playing a role through the inspection and/or registration process. We found that 3 in 5 report having had a vehicle safety recall, but also that owners of older cars are less likely to report receiving personal notifications or open vehicle recalls. But confusion remains about what a safety recall is. 43% reported they do not fully understand what a vehicle safety recall is, but also 43% reported that they don't even know how to check for an open safety recall on their vehicle. These are some of the myths that we tested during the research. On the left side of the screen, you can see the various myths. In the middle, what the rate of believing that myth is for the general population. And then on the right, you can see the significant difference of the oversampled audiences. So just to point out a few to talk about here. So for example, the third one down, recall repairs won't be free for vehicles that are out of warranty. Only 30% of the general population believe this myth. Alarmingly, the African American respondents were 18 percentage points higher in that belief, and Hispanics respondents were 14% higher. Looking at another one, two further down on the page, an automaker offering a free service is suspicious or could be a scam. Only 23% believe this myth in the general population, but when we look at the oversampled populations, Hispanic respondents were about 12 percentage points higher, and low-income respondents were about 8 percentage points higher. So this is alarming, and it really goes to show us that recall awareness and participation is not uniform across the United States. More must be done to overcome misconceptions and dispel myths, and the messenger who brings those messages is very important. Looking at the gap between where drivers would like to hear and where they actually hear, we see some interesting points here as well. My apologies, the blue in the received notification form is the yellow in the graph. So looking at this data point, we see on the far left, manufacturer notification. We do that every single time we are providing that notification, and that aligns with much of the respondents. But what they also said is that they would be open to hearing about recalls more or from different sources, such as dealership, media, government agencies, and insurance companies. But we see a large gap, and you can see in the box in the middle, the 28 down to 16% gaps between where they prefer to hear about it and where they actually hear about it. We also found very interesting this difference and desire between populations for state notification. So 60% of respondents agreed that repairing safety recalls should be required to pass a state vehicle inspection. What we see is that the Hispanic population indexed 7 or 10% higher at 70%. An African American population was 7% higher at 67%. We also saw 52% of the respondents agreed that repairing a safety recall should be required to obtain a vehicle registration. Interestingly here, 60% of Hispanic respondents responded to this one in the affirmative. Our hypothesis for these here, and it played out in some anecdotal and free-form conversations in the survey, was that as we saw back in the myths area and the familiarity with recalls, these populations are looking they're not familiar with recalls or as familiar with recalls as they would like to be. And one of the hypotheses here is that the state helping ensure through an inspection or a registration that recalls are completed kind of insulates or helps insulate the registrar or the buyer or the person who's having their vehicle inspected. And it gives a kind of a safety net that helps them feel more comfortable that their vehicle is safe, and there's multiple ways to catch and identify safety recalls. So what can we do? The states can help influence owners and boost repair rates, and therefore improve public safety, especially among vulnerable groups. I haven't mentioned military, but very similar to some of the other groups we've talked about, they move around a lot, which makes their contact information less accurate more often, and that makes it harder for them to find as well. So state licensing and registration is an excellent vehicle to provide some information, because you have a direct interface with vehicle owners about their vehicle at repeating touch points. These authorities also represent a trusted source, and people rely on the state and to provide information, and the state has an excellent opportunity to be that trusted source. There is federal funding available at no cost share to help cover the cost of setting up or improving a current notification system. NHTSA has released the state process for informing consumers of recalls grant. This program is to help reduce the number of vehicles that have open safety recalls. The program has been shown to be very cost effective to both improve safety and reduce the burden on vehicle owners. They have $1.5 million per year for 5 years to be used by the state in any way to notify owners of open recalls. We've had a lot of conversation with NHTSA about these grants. The application process is extremely simple, and the stipulations are also very limited. The NHTSA is encouraging states to do this in any way they would like to do that, to notify owners. What works in your state is what they want you to do. So each year, NHTSA releases the notice of funding opportunity for these grants, and we can help pass the word through and with GHSA when that happens. And lastly, just as a kind of a good news or case study, we can look at the Check to Protect program. So Stellantis is a member of the Check to Protect program. It is a program of the National Safety Council, and it was founded in 2017. And the goal is to reduce, to help drivers become recall aware and help them take that next step and get it fixed immediately. On the right side, we can see that the data shows owners who become recall aware through a trusted source choose to act. Various states encourage owners to check for recalls at checktoprotect.org already. It's on the links on their website, in their social pages. And we can see that the repair rates for owners who use the site are higher than many other outreach actions. So if we look at the data, we can see for VIN search that have open recalls, so VIN search with open recalls, those that get repaired within 30 days, 2/3 of all OEMs, and the Stellantis data is just a little lower at 63%, but the overall repair rate goes north of 70%, given more time. So we can see that owners who become recall aware through a trusted source, whether they look it up on their own or the states are helping them, is quite high. And this is a substantial data point. And we really think that states have a great opportunity here to help them enhance public safety and get that word out as that trusted source. So thank you very much for your time today. I look forward to taking any questions and discussing. My name again is Chris Freeman. I work for Stellantis. I am the head of government investigations and advocacy within our safety office, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
You may think Carfax is only used for car purchases, but Faisal Hasan will share how states can use Carfax's free recall lookup tool to check thousands of vehicles for open recalls. As Carfax's Vice President of Data and Public Policy, he works with vehicle manufacturers, businesses, and government organizations to help them use this tool to increase recall closure rates. Welcome, Faisal.
Hi, my name is Faisal Hasan. I work for Carfax. I'm Carfax's Vice President for Data and Public Policy. A big part of my focus has been vehicle safety for the last 25 years. And one of the areas of vehicle safety that I've focused on has been closing open recalls. Today in the United States, there are a little over 50 million vehicles with open recalls. Carfax has been very focused on creating a service that closes those recalls. And we work with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, and we work very closely with them to create systems that allow people and businesses to close those recalls. We know today that our tool, which we created in 2018, has looked at almost 8 billion VINs. That's almost half of the car park in the United States. If you look at all the vehicles in operation, virtually all of the vehicles in operation, half of those have been run through this system. We found that rental car companies have found our tool useful. We call it the Vehicle Recall Search Service. We have found that departments of motor vehicles, insurers, they've all found it incredibly useful. For the focus of this discussion, though, I do want to talk about the role of the departments of motor vehicles. When we set out to create the Vehicle Recall Search Service, one of the things that we really wanted it to do was have the greatest impact at areas where people pay attention. And if you think about it, people are getting flyers from their dealers and from aftermarket companies all of the time. Most of the time we put them in the trash, we don't even read them. However, when you get something from your Department of Motor Vehicles, your insurer, your financial institution, the odds are pretty good you're going to take the time to read it. So we put a lot of focus on working with departments of motor vehicles, and the concept being, when you get your vehicle re-registered, we try to convince departments of motor vehicles to check that VIN to see if it has an open recall. The program, the Vehicle Recall Search Service, is completely free. There's zero cost to the Department of Motor Vehicle, to the end user, to anyone. And the idea is, that's a great touch point and a trusted touch point. And so when you marry the Carfax name along with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation and your local Department of Motor Vehicles, you have this really powerful tool. And today, a number of states, very large states, California uses the Vehicle Recall Search Service for both registrations as well as safety and emissions inspections. New York uses us on the inspection side. Ohio uses us for registrations. Arizona for registrations. Texas for inspections. Connecticut, Maryland, Washington State, Puerto Rico, and the list continues to grow. We really believe that there's an opportunity here with the Alliance to grow this even further. We think the more states that get on board and are able to use the system, the greater and the faster we're going to be able to close recalls. The reality that we're dealing with today is that the Governor's Highway Safety Association is in a perfect position to help us push this concept out to the states. And in a lot of cases, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration has even provided funding to the states to implement this. Again, there is zero cost to the states. And the backside of it is really powerful because we're able to close those recalls very, very quickly. I mean, we know that today, just through the Vehicle Recall Search Service, we're checking 7 to 8 million vehicles a day. That's how many, 7 to 8 million a day. I mean, that's crazy. And when you think about that, 1 out of every 5 vehicles on the road today has an open safety recall, that's pretty amazing. We've got about 10 states on board. We'd really like to grow that to all 51 U.S. jurisdictions and territories. We've got 27 rental car companies who use it every day, 16 fleet management companies, a number of financial institutions, a number of very large insurers who are checking VINs every day, making consumers and policyholders aware, hey, you have an open recall, go get it fixed. It's a pretty powerful tool. 8 million VINs a day, 240 million VINs a month, 8 million VINs since inception, 50% of all the vehicles in operation, and it is free. I think one of the most powerful things that we found about it is that when you get a DMV involved with sending out this kind of alert, the response rate really jumps very quickly because people trust what their DMV is telling them. We think that the Vehicle Recall Search Service can ensure that more vehicles are checked regularly. We believe this increases driver safety, and ultimately it helps the vehicle manufacturers close these key recalls. If you talk to any of the DMVs who work with us, they will tell you that we lead to recalls. This Vehicle Recall Search Service leads to recalls. And remember, this is an alliance between the private and the public sector and the nonprofit. It's the Alliance, it's Carfax, it's the DMVs. It's everybody coming together at zero cost because we were able to build it off of our vehicle history database and get this data out there to consumers. So we would love to be able to work with you and push this out to even more states. I'm looking forward to answering questions about this. We're very excited about where it's gone and where it can be in the next few years. Thank you. And again, my name is Faisal Hasan with Carfax, and look forward to any questions you might have.
And our final panelist is Philip Dacey, Deputy Administrator at the Maryland Department of Transportation Motor Vehicle Administration. He'll share how Maryland launched its highly successful recall notice program and how your state can too. During his 2 decades at the Maryland Department of Transportation, he's tackled a variety of issues, including taking the lead in designing what you're about to hear about today. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation to participate today. Maryland is happy to talk about our recall process. It is something that we're proud of. We were the first state that started notifying vehicles owners of open recalls, and we are happy to tout that today. My name is Philip Dacey. I'm the Director of Policy and Innovation at the Maryland MVA. So in 2018, NHTSA put out a funding opportunity that Maryland took advantage of, and we partnered with NHTSA in order to notify vehicle owners and lessees of open safety recalls that might be on the vehicles that they own and use through the vehicle registration renewal process. One of our partners for that was Cox Automotive, and we worked closely with them in order to make this program a success. The purpose was to evaluate the feasibility and effectiveness of a state process for informing consumers of open motor vehicle safety recalls at the time of their vehicle registration. We wanted to assess whether that supplemental notice of an open safety recall would increase recall remedy rates. The pilot duration was 2 years, from 2018 to 2020. Maryland is on a 2-year renewal cycle, so essentially we would be contacting every vehicle owner through this process over the 2 years. One of the great things about this was that it brought together manufacturers, dealers, consumer, and safety advocates. Usually, a lot of times these groups have opposing interests, and this was a great opportunity that we could bring everybody on board to tout these safety measures. So the process overview was pretty simple. MVA, we send a email notification, then we send a print notification, then we send a final email reminder if you haven't renewed your registration within 10 days, it looks like. And so for the first notice that was email, we would put the vehicle open safety recall on that email notice. Second notice was printed, and we would do the same, and then the third would also have that information. Some challenges that we ran into initially. Surprisingly, there was no database. There was no single database that contained all vehicle registration recalls. Maryland and Cox Automotive had to go each manufacturer to get access to their vehicle recall databases. Additionally, there's no standardized data format for these. So that led to some data inconsistencies. There were times when people were putting recall information in the title that was hundreds of words. Sometimes the title was 2 words. So one of the big successes we had was just compiling this data and standardizing the format of this data so that we were able to access it, print it on the notices, putting in an email, and notifying customers. So some quick statistics here. 4.6 million vehicle registration renewals between April of 2018 and January of 2020. 456,000 of those vehicles had recalls identified. There were 943,000 recalls identified and associated with those 400,000 vehicles. So about 2 open recalls per vehicle with a recall. And then out of that, 346,000 total recalls remedied. Total recall remedy rate was about 36%. So with this program, we were able to, with the funding from NHTSA, we were able to monitor the recall rate. We're no longer able to do that. We don't have visibility into when the recalls are remedied. That was just part of this program. But this program was so successful, MVA continues to operate this program in a very similar way with a different vendor. So these are some statistics we gathered in 2019. Just shows about the average number of vehicles in our renewal cycle per month is about 200,000. Some of those vehicles we're not able to verify the VIN for the recall. We were able to check around 180 to 190,000 vehicles per month for recalls. Of that, there were about 40,000 or so vehicles that had recalls, with the recall count being slightly higher. And what this chart shows really at the end is the percentage of the recalls that have been remedied. You can see over time, the number of recalls remedied goes up. So this chart was put together in early 2019, and the recalls from November 2018 had just 4.9% remedied, 4.9% remedied rate. But the recalls that we did at the beginning of the program in April of 2018 was at 25%. So we saw some stabilizing of the remedied recalls after several months. It did correlate that people, after they got the notice, it did take several months usually for the recall to be remedied, but if it was remedied at all. But we did see some stabilization of that rate. So another important takeaway is that of these 371,000 recall components that were remedied, they were safety related. Most of them were safety related. So you can see airbags represented by far the biggest safety component that was remedied. So we look at that as a huge safety win. Airbags are super important for the safety of a vehicle. And these are serious issues with a vehicle that need to be remedied for safety reasons. You see, airbags was first, electrical system was second, seatbelts was third. So these are big time safety components that really affect the safety of a vehicle and are important to be remedied. They weren't things like, they're smaller types of recalls that could affect the remote start and things like that. But for the most part, these were safety related components. A big win here is that older vehicles accounted for approximately 48% of identified recalls and for 34% of remedied recalls. When we got into this, we talked to the manufacturers, and they were having a hard time getting mobility on the remedied recall rates for older vehicles with older recall. The way we defined the older vehicle here was about 10 years old, and really those recall rates were pretty stable from the manufacturers. People really weren't either getting the notice or just taking it seriously. Sometimes those vehicles had been transferred, and manufacturers were having a hard time finding those vehicles. We did hear about manufacturers with regard to the Takata airbag recall that would actually hire door knockers to go around and try and find vehicle owners to let them know, make sure they were informed about that important safety recall. So we did see movement here from the older vehicles, which manufacturers were super encouraged by. And 34% of those recalls that were remedied as part of this program were the older vehicles. So people got the notice from the MVA. We have the most current updated address, and they took action on it, which is super important. So this slide essentially shows that the recalls are split among different vehicle types, and trucks, sedans, and other vehicles were all included in the recall notices and are all essentially getting the notice and remedying the recalls at similar rates. So Maryland is super proud about this program. It's an important program. We continue with it. We continue sending these notifications to people upon their registration renewals. And recently we had March 3rd through 9th in 2025, we had led a social media campaign just to remind motorists that they're free to check. It's free to check pre-open recalls and free to have them repaired. Additionally, MVA is in the process of identifying open recalls on all the state-owned fleet. So we're doing it ourselves to make sure that all those recalls have been addressed. So I was happy to join with you today. If you have any questions, you can please reach out to me directly, or you can ask them now. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this important information today.
Okay, Thank you, everybody. And now I invite our panelists to get back on camera. We had a lot of information provided, and we have some questions to ask, no surprise. Before I do, I just wanted to, again, thank you for putting those presentations together. And if you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A box. We'll do our best to get them answered today. So to kick us off, Chris, I have a question for you. And I'm sure we have folks on the call today who are interested in taking advantage of the program. So are the funds available from NHTSA only through state highway safety offices, or can other agencies or grantees, maybe in partnership with the state, apply for funding?
Thanks, Kerry. It's really kind of whatever works. So any office in the state can apply. We've had state DMVs, Maryland, for example, as Phil just went through, Maryland ran it through their MDOT facilities, and any state can propose a different solution. We did talk to one state that their registration activities were much more county-based and not more centralized. That's okay too. NHTSA's response to different solutions is whatever works for you and however makes sense in your state. One state did it through inspection stations, so it's really a variety of whatever works.
That makes sense. Where can they get more information about these grants? And is there, I know that you said that it was annual. Is there a time of year when they should keep an eye out for this?
So the time of year has ebbed and flowed a little bit over the last 3 fiscal years. There's this current fiscal year and next fiscal year remaining on the 5-year grants. It's been different timing each year. So what I would say about timing is we will keep our ears open, and we will work with you, Kerry, to get the word out as soon as we hear. Last year when this happened, we're just passing the word as far and as wide as we can. Craig and I were calling and telling everyone we knew in this area that the grants are open for application. As far as more information, the IIJA actual law, the statute that was passed, is it's got a lot of stuff in it, and it's not easy necessarily to read. We can send, maybe Kerry, I can send it through you. I think we have some summary information that we can put out, but really the message is the application process is super simple. You just have to tell when it opens up. You just have to tell NHTSA you're going to notify the people in your state through this method, and this is how much money we think it'll cost to start that process, and that's it. It's very simple.
We like to hear that, don't we? I'm going to actually launch a poll, and now it's time to, where the rubber hits the road. Let us know if you've checked your personal vehicle for recalls. Interested to see if you've done that. While the question is going on, I have a question for Phil. What advice do you have for state highway safety offices interested in working with their licensing agency to develop and implement programs like yours?
Well, I guess if you're trying to sell it, there's a lot of benefits that you can highlight, and we really haven't found any downsides. One of the things I didn't mention in the presentation, but we were concerned initially that this would lead to a lot of questions for our customer service departments, with people getting this on their official notice. The recall notification, as I made, doesn't really affect somebody's renewal. They can still renew their vehicle, but we kind of fear that people would make that link if MVA was making that notification, but it really never materialized. So we really only received positive feedback. We monitored initially, kind of braced for impact when we notify a couple 100,000 people about recalls, and nothing materialized. So I'd say there's a lot of benefits without really any downsides. Again, brought together dealers, manufacturers, and consumer rights groups. I mean, at the press event that we had representatives from all 3 groups, which are normally naturally opposed to each other. The dealers, manufacturers, and consumer rights groups all have their own interests, but really it was a great press conference where we're all holding hands and marching in the same direction. Of course, the safety benefits, those are pretty obvious, but it really has been a great program for us without any downsides.
Mm-hmm. And we saw from our poll that about 82% of the respondents here today that they have checked their vehicle recall. And I hope after the webinar, they go and check themselves to see if they have a recall. We did have a question from the audience for you, Philip. How much work was it for the DMV to apply for funds? And then also to contact the OEMs for that data program that you had.
Yeah, well, the application process back then in 2018, I didn't mention, but we only had 90 days from the time we were awarded to send out the first notices. So we were on a really accelerated timeline. We got it done in 90 days. It was a fair amount of work on our side just to get it. Back then we were dealing with legacy systems, and we had some DOS-based programs that we had to change. But that part. Really, once it was up and running, it kind of ran on its own. The OEMs, it was a little more tricky because we had to go back then too. It sounds like there's been progress made since then, but we didn't have access to NHTSA's database for whatever reason. They didn't want us to access it directly, so we had to go OEM by OEM and actually make phone calls. We were actually working contacts and trying to make phone calls to try and explain this to certain manufacturers to try and get access to their database, which they had never. And of course, their databases are in different states, different states of accessibility. And so, yeah, we were trying to compile that and make people know that we're doing this for the first time. And so hopefully all that ground is paved now. It's much easier for the next follow along.
We did have a question asking about, if there's a link for the NHTSA grant program. I do have a link that I will provide in the follow-up email to the sam.gov link. That was what I could find. If any of our panelists have more information, send it to me after the webinar and we will include it in that follow-up email. So the email will go out tomorrow. Faisal, got a question for you. How can a state or local government entity sign up for the vehicle recall search service? And then, you mentioned that it was free. I just want to make sure there's no underlying costs for setup or interacting with the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the easy one up front first, there is zero cost. The way the Alliance and the vehicle manufacturers helped create the program was the concept was for it to be free, and it is completely free. The information's available so that there's zero cost. If a state decides to do it a certain way or some sort of business entity where they might have to spend money, but access to the data is completely free. We haven't had any issues with anyone complaining about cost, in all honesty. In terms of applying, there's a website, the Vehicle Recall Search Service.com, or you can go to carfax.com/recall. There's a form to fill out. You click, you fill a very short form. Once the form is filled out, we review it. We send it to the Alliance. The Alliance approves it. We're averaging accounts set up in 48 hours. It's pretty quick, and there's two types of accounts. You can get an API that we built that you can implement, or you can run VINs, and we can handle 10,000 batch VINs, endless amounts. So whichever path an entity would like to take.
Okay, well, that's great. And this is an open question. I don't know who on the panel would like to answer this, but state highway safety offices can also incorporate recall awareness into their public participation and engagement efforts. Is there a way to identify zip codes with a lot of open recalls?
I can go first. So Carfax does put out an overview of different jurisdictions that have a lot of recalls. We probably do that every other month. So we'll look at like the DC. I live in Washington, DC, so we'll look at the DC metro area, the Atlanta metro area, LA. But we'll really break it down by states, and we'll do that for all safety recalls. We'll do it for Takata. We'll do it for do not drive and park outside. And we really do. Now, we don't break it down by zip code, but we do break it down into those areas. Obviously, with Takata, the southern states are very, very important because humidity plays a role in those. So we have spent a lot of time working in Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, the states where you're going to have high humidity in the summertime. And I know a lot of the OEMs, and we work with them, have done an incredible amount of work. And the Southwest as well. I know the air is drier, but there's still a lot of recalls there. And so that's been a really good relationship. But if you look, if you go to our website, you'll be able to see those press releases and the breakdown. And our recall page actually has all types of details.
And again, we will include a link to that page in the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. So stay tuned, everybody. There's more to come. Okay, Craig.
I was just going to say,
sorry.
I'll just add to what Faisal was saying before. The automakers are also always happy to help. Chris and I are constantly doing these sorts of analyses, and we're happy to share that information. Again, it sort of goes with what Chris was saying before, that we do see higher recall or lower recall completion rates in more disadvantaged communities. So there is some logic to it, but again, we have a lot of data to sort of back that up.
That's great. You have been working to pass state legislation to address the proliferation of the counterfeit, non-functioning airbags. Are there any states currently working on the legislation?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of success. I mentioned in my presentation the 6 states that have sort of passed legislation on recall completion. We've got pending legislation right now in Massachusetts and New Jersey, and I see in the audience we've got a couple of folks from the Massachusetts Registrar's Office, so really glad to see that. We're trying to work with them. We're also having really productive conversations with folks in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Indiana. So it's really nice to see that this issue is crossing party lines, urban and rural, and everyone sort of sees that this is an issue that's important and a really common sense way to improve road safety.
Of course, state highway safety offices can't lobby. So what role do you see them playing to help educate elected officials about the impact of vehicle recalls on roadway safety?
Yeah, so the good thing is we've already built a really good coalition that's ready to lobby. It's got the automakers, it's got safety advocates, it's got consumer groups, a lot of really engaged folks there. What we are seeing is a lot of policymakers sort of reaching out to those state traffic safety offices and asking, is this going to be a problem? Can we do this? And we understand, again, that a lot of folks are dealing with different systems, and they have technological difficulties, and they, as I mentioned before, are overworked and underappreciated. But again, just sort of working with us to figure out what needs you have. We're happy to make that work. But again, just sort of as long as they sort of get on board or don't raise red flags, we've seen a lot of success from a policy standpoint.
Actually, I think we have time for another poll. So we know that partnering with law enforcement agencies is to help them educate consumers about recalls is a really great way to build trust between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. While we have people kind of, answering this question, it looks like there's a lot of opportunity here for people to partner. I'm just going to end the poll and share the results. Again, lots of opportunity. Only about 11% of the respondents are partnering with their law enforcement. So thinking about that, I'm asking the panel, have you worked with law enforcement to promote recall campaigns? And do you have any suggestions for maybe those 90% of our attendees who haven't done that outreach yet?
I could weigh in a bit, Kerry. We've over the years done a number of different pilot programs with law enforcement agencies around the country. We've done some through the GHSA, our partnership with you guys, Kerry, but we've also done some separately. One of the things that we've heard from law enforcement is they're always interested in a good reason to talk to people in the traffic and safety arena, in that kind of area, that those topics. It's not just about speeding. It's not just about running red lights. It's not about, you have a brake light out. It's not punitive. This is a way that they can help add some positive conversation and information to what otherwise is not always a great interaction. So we have worked with different law enforcement agencies. We've provided them with check to protect material, little business-sized cards that they can give people that help people understand how to check for recalls and where to go online. We've had different law enforcement agencies do pilots to connect directly to the ability to a data set to look up that vehicle in real time, which you can do on Check to Protect or Carfax or any number of automaker websites, you can check a vehicle's recall status in real time, a specific vehicle. So we've done that as well. There are some officers who love this ability to do that, have that interaction. There are others that don't so much. We had one officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area who it seemed like it was his own competition with himself to see how many people he could talk to about recalls and how many VINs he could check in a number of months doing his job. So there are some very, very interested law enforcement officers and agencies who really look at this as a good opportunity for a public service that they can provide in their communities.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in on this one?
I mean, we do work on the inspection end. I know that's not directly law enforcement, but we do work on the inspection end. The safety and emissions inspections in New York, California, Texas. The unfortunate thing about Texas, though, and they're really one of the biggest users of the vehicle recall search services. In December, their inspection program is going to get sunsetted by law. And so we're hoping that the Texas DMV comes on board using registrations to check for recalls so we don't lose that momentum, just because we've just seen the usage in Texas has been amazing, and then it's all just going to stop in December. But you know, the using it in the inspection process where someone has to go in, they're getting a safety or an emissions inspection and prints out right on the receipt, and they're usually told by the inspector, hey, you also have an open recall. And as these folks know, one of the fascinating things about this whole thing is you can actually pass your safety inspection even if you have a do not drive on your your car's not an open recall or a Takata airbag, but you can still pass the safety inspection just because of the way things are set up. And unfortunately, there are only about 15 safety inspection programs left in the United States. But so that's just another way to approach it.
I can't believe it, but this hour has flown by. I've learned a lot from our experts, and I hope that you did too, everybody in the audience. I encourage you all to take advantage of the resources and initiatives that you heard about today to help educate vehicle owners about open recalls and, of course, the danger that they pose to safety. I hope you'll join the conversation again at the annual meeting. We will be in Pittsburgh this August. You can go to our website, GHSA.org, to get the latest on what is sure to be a fantastic conference. But don't worry, in the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow, we will include links to learn more about the annual meeting, links to resources that you've heard about from today's webinar, and a couple additional resources that we will dial in after reviewing some of the questions and ideas that you had. A huge thank you to our partner, American Honda, for supporting this webinar and for being a longtime roadway safety champion. And I just hope you'll join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their expertise, for their commitment to roadway safety, and for their work on vehicle recalls. So Chris, Craig, Faisal, Phil, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here. And we'd like to thank the people who gave time today. We know that everybody's time is valuable, and we thank you for joining us today. I hope everybody has a safe day, an enjoyable ride home, and go ahead and check your vehicle for recalls. Thank you, everybody.